What would you say if I told you that deep in the woods in a California state park, a gap exists? I'm a park ranger over in California, and there's a particular section of the park where none of us ever go, an isolated valley off the eastern boundary. Maps mark it as undesignated wilderness, but amongst us rangers, it's known as the Gap. An aura of dread hangs over the place, something that curdles your blood and raises the hairs on the back of your neck. The top brass tell us to steer clear and not to let curiosity get the best of us. But there was this one day. I remember the morning sun bathing the forest in a soft glow as I set out on my usual patrol, bundled up in my gear. I stuck to the routine, making my way around the park's perimeter, ticking off checkpoints on my map. Then, without warning, I came to, sprawled out on the damp earth under a canopy of towering trees I didn't recognize. My map was gone. My compass, too. I checked my wristwatch. It was almost midnight. Hours had vanished. I couldn't recall how I got there, let alone why I was there. Panic welled up in my chest. I stumbled to my feet, every instinct screaming at me to run, but where to? The stars above were obscured by thick, ominous clouds. The forest around was pitch black and unfamiliar, and then I heard it, a soft rustling behind me, something large moving in the underbrush. I turned, straining my eyes, but saw nothing. Then again, louder this time, closer. A shiver ran down my spine as I fumbled for my flashlight. I clicked it on, casting a trembling beam into the darkness. The forest was silent, too silent. Then a low growl echoed through the trees, making my blood run cold. I started walking, my mind racing. Every shadow seemed to move, every sound was amplified. The hours that followed were a blur. The feeling of being watched never left, a relentless dread that made me feel like prey. I stumbled upon strange markings on the trees, not quite animal, not quite human. Heard whispers in a language I couldn't understand. I saw eyes, bright and gleaming, staring at me from the undergrowth. It was near dawn when I finally found the park's boundary. I was met with disbelief when I recounted the story, followed by stern warnings to keep quiet. They brushed it off as a product of stress, a mental lapse. I wanted to believe them, I really did, but I know what I experienced. I know there's something in the gap, something dark and terrifying. I continue my patrols, but I never venture near the eastern boundary. I always have an eye on the wilderness, on the edge of the unknown. I wish I could just forget, but the memory is a ghost that haunts me every night. I tell my story not as a cautionary tale, but as a plea. Stay away from the gap. There are some things in this world that are better left undisturbed. Nightmares have plagued me every night since that incident. I'd wake up in cold sweat, heart pounding, the ghastly sounds from the forest still echoing in my ears. My days were filled with paranoia, my eyes constantly darting towards the eastern boundary, half expecting to see those gleaming eyes staring back at me. My fellow rangers noticed the change, but I couldn't bring myself to share what I'd gone through. I had no choice but to request a transfer. But the higher-ups didn't approve, instead assigning me a mandatory leave to recuperate. It wasn't what I wanted, but it provided me with a much-needed respite. A few weeks away from the park, from the haunting forest and its unseen predator. When I finally returned, things seemed to go back to normal for a while. I stuck to my patrols, steering clear of the eastern boundary, trying to forget the horror that lay beyond. But as much as I tried, I could never shake off the feeling of being watched, of being hunted. Then, one day, a group of campers went missing. Their last known location was perilously close to the gap. A cold chill ran down my spine. I wanted to believe it was a coincidence, but deep down, I knew better. Search parties were dispatched. We scoured the park, combed every trail, checked every campsite. Nothing. It was as if they had vanished into thin air. I volunteered for the night shift, hoping to find some clue, some trace of the missing campers. As I ventured deeper into the park, that familiar sense of dread began to creep in. The soft rustling of leaves, the haunting quiet, the eerie glow of the moon. It all felt ominously familiar. I was on edge, my hand constantly on the handle of my service pistol. Just as I was about to turn back, I saw it, a faint glimmer of light, like a beacon, deep within the gap. Against my better judgment, I started to move towards it. I knew the risks, I remembered the terror, but I had to know. I moved cautiously, my flashlight piercing the darkness, the beam bouncing off gnarled trunks and thick foliage. As I neared the light, the whispers began. Quiet at first, then growing louder, a cacophony of voices speaking in hushed, frantic tones. The light came from a small clearing, and as I stepped into it, my blood turned to ice. In the middle of the clearing were the missing campers, or what was left of them. Their faces were pale, eyes wide in eternal horror, bodies frozen in twisted poses of fear, and around them those same strange markings I had seen before, carved into the ground in a gruesome circle. I stood frozen in horror, a scream stuck in my throat. As I turned to run, I saw them, the gleaming eyes from my nightmares, the shadowy figure looming at the edge of the clearing. A growl echoed through the trees, sending a shiver down my spine. I don't remember how I made it back, how I managed to escape. The next thing I knew, I was back at the ranger station, gasping for air, my clothes torn and my body covered in scratches. I reported what I had found, ignoring the skeptical looks and veiled whispers. They mounted a rescue operation, but when they reached the clearing there was nothing, no bodies, no markings, no proof of what I had seen. I was relieved of my duties after that, considered unstable, a liability. But I know what I saw. I know what's lurking in the gap. I can't shake the feeling of dread, the nightmares, the glowing eyes watching me from the dark. There's something in that park, something malevolent, something hungry, and I can't shake the feeling that it's still watching me. Despite being far away from the park, I can't help but feel its presence. It's as though a piece of the gap has embedded itself within me, a dark seed that continues to grow, fed by my fear. The whispers still reach me, the rustling leaves, the low growls. They're always there at the edge of my consciousness, a chilling reminder of what lies in the heart of the wilderness. My life has become a shell of what it once was. I can't hold a job, can't form relationships, can't enjoy the simple pleasures that once brought me peace. There's a constant tension in my muscles, a fear that gnaws at my sanity. I've sought help, visited therapists and counselors, but how can you treat a fear that's rooted in an unspeakable truth? I've tried to warn others, to share the horror lurking in the park, but my words fall on deaf ears. They think I've gone mad, that I'm suffering from a severe case of PTSD, and maybe they're right. Maybe I have lost my grip on reality. But the truth remains. The gap is real, and something terrifying dwells within it. Some nights, when the dread is too much, when the whispers grow louder, I find myself staring out into the distance, towards the direction of the park, and I swear, if the wind is just right, I can hear a low growl echoing across the miles, a terrifying reminder of the predator waiting in the darkness. Then a call came out of the blue, almost a year after the incident. It was the park's chief ranger, a gruff, no-nonsense man named Davis. His voice was graver than I remembered. "Come back," he said, his voice just above a whisper. "We believe you." I dropped the phone, a mix of relief and terror washing over me. They finally believed me. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't imagining things. The horror I had experienced, the terror that had haunted me for so long, it was real, and now they needed my help. When I arrived at the park, I was met with grim faces. There had been more disappearances, more strange incidents. People had seen those strange markings, heard the whispers, felt the dread. It was all eerily familiar, all too real. They wanted me to guide a special team into the gap. The plan was to get to the bottom of these occurrences, to find out what was really happening. I wanted to refuse, to turn around and never look back. But I knew I couldn't. I owed it to the victims, to myself. I had to face the beast, to end this nightmare once and for all. As we trekked into the gap, every step filled with a sense of impending doom, the forest seemed to close in around us. The whispers grew louder, the growls more ominous. I felt the eyes on us, watching, waiting, but we pressed on, guided by a grim determination and the hope of unraveling the mystery. When we reached the clearing where I had found the campers, it was empty. No traces of the gruesome scene I'd encountered, but the dread was still there, a heavy blanket of fear that seemed to choke the air out of the place. We set up camp, knowing that nightfall would bring the true test. As the darkness enveloped us, the forest came alive. The whispers became voices, the growls turned into roars, and then they came, the eyes, glowing in the darkness, watching us with an eerie calm. A figure stepped out of the shadows, tall, menacing, not quite human. A chill ran down my spine. This was it. I don't remember much from that night. There were screams, gunshots, chaos. I remember running, the beast hot on our heels, and then silence. When the sun rose, I was alone, the team, the equipment all gone, but the beast was nowhere to be seen. When I returned to the park headquarters, I was met with disbelief. I was accused of leading the team to their doom, and the disbelieving eyes were all too familiar. Yet something had shifted, like a splinter that had made its way under their skin, planting the seed of doubt. Weeks after the failed expedition, while I was nursing a whiskey at the local bar, my phone buzzed with a video link from an unknown number. Reluctantly, I opened it. What I saw froze the blood in my veins. It was footage from a body camera, presumably from one of the members of the special team. Through the shaky and grainy video, I saw the group setting up camp. As the night fell, the whispers I had mentioned became audible, and the growing unease among the group was palpable. The figure from the shadows emerged, its eyes aglow in the darkness. The footage ended with a blood-curdling scream echoing in the stillness of the night. The video went viral overnight. Suddenly the world was watching, and the park authorities couldn't deny the existence of the Gap's horrors anymore. There was a collective gasp, a wave of fear, and the park was hastily closed for public access. News outlets wanted my story, researchers wanted my insight, and authorities sought my guidance. I was thrust into a role I never wanted, but one I had no choice but to accept. With newfound support and resources, a larger, more equipped team was assembled to probe deeper into the Gap's mystery. This time, I was more of a consultant, guiding them from the safety of the park's headquarters, using the knowledge I had gathered over the years. Months passed in rigorous research and countless expeditions, yet the Gap remained a mystery, an enigma that seemed to deepen with each attempt to uncover it. Every team we sent came back with more questions than answers. Every investigation seemed to add another layer to the puzzle, but as the mystery deepened, so did my obsession. The whispers in the night, the glowing eyes, the unexplained phenomena, they consumed me. I started digging into the park's history, its folklore, the stories passed down from generation to generation. I went through ancient records, interviewed old residents, delved into tribal lore. I was looking for any information that might shed light on the strange happenings within the Gap. One day, while sifting through the dusty archives of the local library, I stumbled upon an old diary. It belonged to a man named Nathaniel Gray, a park ranger from the 1800s. As I pored over his entries, I felt my heart pound in my chest. Gray had encountered the same phenomena, the same beast. He wrote about whispers in the night, glowing eyes in the darkness, and a growing sense of dread. He talked about a dark presence in the park, a force that guarded the Gap. Gray's accounts were chillingly similar to my own experiences, but what struck me most was his final entry. "Confront the beast, face your fear," he had written. "Only then will the Gap reveal its secrets." Gray's words struck a chord. I had spent so much time running from the beast, avoiding the Gap, that I had never considered confronting it. But the thought of going back, of facing the terror again, was a daunting one, yet I knew that it was the only way. I assembled a new team, one that was willing to take the risk, to confront the beast. We trained, prepared, and when we were ready, we ventured into the Gap. As we approached the clearing where I had first encountered the beast, the whispers began. The dread started creeping in, and then we saw it, the glowing eyes in the dark. This time, however, we didn't run. We stood our ground, confronted our fear. To our surprise, the beast didn't attack. It seemed to study us, its eyes probing, before it retreated back into the darkness. And then, something extraordinary happened. The Gap, which had always been a place of fear and dread, started to change. The eerie silence gave way to the sounds of nocturnal animals. The cold dread was replaced by a mild serenity. It was as if by confronting our fear, we had somehow pacified the beast. When we returned to the park headquarters, our story was met with a mix of disbelief and awe. But as others ventured into the gap, they found that the place had indeed changed. The whispers had ceased, the glowing eyes were gone, and the dread was no more. Our confrontation with the beast had somehow shifted the dynamics. The gap, once a place of terror, had become a place of wonder. Researchers started flocking in, eager to explore the now accessible area. We found old relics, ancient inscriptions, and flora and fauna that were thought to be extinct. As for me, I continued my role as a park ranger, but with a newfound respect for the mysteries that nature holds. The gap, once my greatest fear, had become my greatest fascination.
That's all for now. Please leave us a comment and tell us what you think. Please also like and subscribe. Thank you.